All right, very good. Praise be Jesus Christ. Ave Maria. I am here with Peter Sonski, the American Solidarity Party's 2024 candidate for president. How are you doing, Mr. Sonski?
I'm well. Thank you very much, Brad. Glad to be with you.
Thank you. As I told you before we began, thank you very much for doing this. So we're going to have about a half an hour here. As you're watching, please remember to like the video. You can share this. A lot of people have never heard of the American Solidarity Party that I've talked to, who are potential, who would be potential supporters, maybe potential voters. So we're going to talk about this a little bit. I heard something funny, so we're going to get right into this because I have it on good authority that we are in the sixth seal of the apocalypse. Someone told me earlier, so I want to get this interview out before we hit number 7. So, Mr. Sonski, to begin, I thought it would be good to start a little bit about your personal life, your family life, and we'll build from there.
Certainly, Brad. So I am a native of New England. I was born in Massachusetts. Spent much of my life in Connecticut. I attended school in Washington, D.C. at the Catholic University of America, and I also worked in Washington at the Basilica of the National Shrine at the Immaculate Conception for several years. Now back in Connecticut. I'm married and have 9 adult children. I have 6 grandchildren. I've been involved in local politics in the community in which I live for the last roughly 8 years as a member of the regional school board. Before that, I had also been involved in politics on the municipal side of things as a member of a municipal finance board, as well as a member of a municipal board of selectmen, which is kind of the equivalent of a city council. So I've spent some of my life as a Democrat in the very early years. I switched for a time to the Republican Party and was disillusioned there as well. And for probably on the order of 20 years was politically homeless. I learned of the American Solidarity Party in 2018. And as I've said in other interviews, when I discovered it for the last 6 years, and earlier this spring was nominated by
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me? You cut out a little bit. Cut out for
I can hear you well, yes.
Okay, sorry. You cut out there a little bit right before you said you were nominated. So you were nominated last spring for as the candidate for the American Solidarity Party.
That's correct.
But
in June of this year.
Yes. And by the way, I might bring up some things from that. But earlier today, I watched your acceptance speech, which I thought was excellent. There's a lot of good points in there that maybe I can bring up. You mentioned something. You mentioned feeling like a political orphan, like you're homeless in the current climate with Republicans and Democrats. A lot of people, I myself have felt the same way. Registered either when I first registered to vote, I was 18. And I registered Republican. I flirted with libertarianism in my 20s. Got away from that. Then I was just unaffiliated. And so as having a conversion around the time that I turned 30, I began to look at how the politics line up with the magisterium, Catholic social teaching. And it just seemed like there was no party that represented all of that. You had a little bit of good here, you had a little bit of good there, then you had a lot of bad, a lot of gray areas that were in between. So how important is it for not only Americans but people of faith, specifically Christians? How important is it to be politically active if you feel unsatisfied or you don't feel like your voice is being heard in the political sphere? How important is it to become active?
When you say active, Brad, are you talking about active in the sense that one would actually run for elected office? Or are you just suggesting that you be an informed and engaged citizen where you might be attending local or county level meetings and offering points of view and really trying to understand how government is operating?
Yeah, I think, well, for those who have the disposition to run, I think that's an option. But for most of us, that's not the case. But for so many of us, it's like we're going about our everyday life, and then you hit the 4-year cycle of voting for president, whatever the case may be. I just think, I mean, active that way. Um, maybe we could touch upon the principle of subsidiarity, like active on the local level, um, because that just seems to be really missing. It seems like politics in this country, everything becomes very quickly nationalized. Everything becomes about the federal stage, the national stage, and so the local or the county, the state matters kind of get swept under the rug, and it's discouraging. So maybe some of us are active in the pro-life movement or other things, but it just seems like there's not a lot of avenues for people to become active that way.
Sure. Well, as a foundation, I would say that I think we're all called as Christians to contribute to the common good.
Mhm.
And if a contribution to the common good comes in the form of political involvement, then by all means, I think it's a path that ought to be pursued. But as I hinted at shortly ago, it doesn't necessarily mean serving as an elected official. It might just mean remaining informed and remaining engaged in a way that you can be of influence. You talked about subsidiarity, and the principle of subsidiarity is that decisions should be made at the lowest level or the level closest to the people in which they impact. So, deciding upon the speed limit on a local road, or deciding upon where a school building should be erected, deciding upon programs of recreation for youth or anything like that. All of these make logical sense that they be decided at a local level. But as you alluded to shortly ago, with the evolution of government in the United States, everything seems to go upward. Everything goes in a direction from the local to the county to the state and then to the federal level. And what's happening over time is that all the decisions are being brought to a higher level. In my own experience, I find that I receive, as a local elected official charged by those that put me in office to make decisions, I'm getting dictated to by either state agencies or even the state legislature that's imposing upon me requirements that I have to implement on my local level. And that's not subsidiarity. That's not allowing me to consider circumstances and make decisions for the best interest of the people closest to me. So this is a principle that the Catholic Church teaches is imperative because it recognizes the rights of individuals and it allows for their active participation in self-determination of things that are of value, importance, and belong to them by right.
Okay, thank you. Very good answer. Let's move on from that. I think we're talking about subsidiarity. So since we're talking about the as local as possible, as long as it's competent, the authority should be as local as possible, as long as it's competent. Um, as
And
I
that even goes to the
Yeah.
family level, by the way.
Yeah, well, that's a good point because I want to talk about the family. So the family is the nucleus or building block of society. And so speaking about the family, I like what you said it when your acceptance speech, when you talked about I think it was your washing machine broke right before you flew out to Texas, which is funny because we went through recently, our dishwasher broke. So we're hand washing everything with five very young kids and people working and stuff like this. So often to move to, this has to do with politics, but to move to the economic sphere, it's difficult for people to find a job, for the head of the household to find not only a living wage, a family wage. And so as the candidate for the American Solidarity Party, what is the ideal economic philosophy or principle that we should be following, or what would be ideal for the family?
Sure, you make an excellent point. Well, the ideal would be that there could be one wage earner that would be able to provide for the needs of the entire family. And so often, as you note, that's not possible today. It almost requires two incomes, and even sometimes two incomes leaves still a struggle, because our economy is one that has grown to serve a class of wealth, a class of highly educated individuals. Housing, I find, is very difficult these days. It's not affordable. Healthcare sometimes is not accessible. In our society, we're used to obtaining healthcare benefits through our employers. But often today, many employers are now limiting hours so that an individual may not be given a full-time work schedule and therefore not qualify for the benefits that go along with full-time employment, and not be able to secure health insurance as a result of that. Also, so many laborers, so many employees are not earning what is a living wage. Look at the auto workers that have been on strike now for approaching a month. They've been struggling because they see a profitable firm for which they work. They see executives that are benefiting with increased salaries, and they're forced to make concessions. There's got to be a recognition on the part of labor leaders, business leaders, that labor has value. That my earnings, Brad, my ability to bring home a salary is my right, and it is my possession. It allows me to care for my family. It allows me to put a roof over the head, and to enjoy some leisure aspect. If all of that is being stolen from them and instead enjoyed by the leadership classes, then we are disservicing the people and not recognizing their human dignity.
Mm-hmm.
So we value what we consider as distributism. Distributism is a term that was invented back in the early 20th century. Hilaire Belloc and G.K. Chesterton are probably the two biggest proponents of it. But it really recognizes the fact that individuals have a right and a dignity that they manifest through their labors, and that instead of being a cog in the wheel, if you will, instead of being like another element of raw materials, that you are valued as a laborer. You might even be a co-owner of a business. You might be part of a collaborative. You might own the truck that you are making deliveries with. You might own the tools that you're using on the job. You might be, as I say, a part owner in a company that gives you more wealth and more control over your own circumstances. So that's what we value. And it also encourages entrepreneurship, and we support doing business with local businesses. Remember, we talked about distributism and doing things at the lowest proper level, competent level. Supporting local businesses and helping your community to thrive is all a part of that.
Good. I think it was you mentioned Chesterton. I think it was Chesterton that said the problem with capitalism isn't that there are too many capitalists, but that there are too few. And so that points back to that distributist model where you have workers' rights, ownership by the workers, localism. I've heard distributism also called localism, kind of localizing with the economy.
Exactly.
Would combat, again, we look at this, everything being elevated to the national or global sphere, and then the the individual and the society of the individual, the family becomes, like you said, like so much raw material. Or it doesn't matter. We can move persons from Central America to North America. They're potential, factory workers or field workers. We can move people around. We can, not optimize the family, as you said, not pay a living wage. I think that's a very good point. Again, I wanted to stress that because as I teach in high school, the students I teach, this kind of thing sounds alien to them, and it sounds alien to most of us. When we live in a market economy that is so global, playing off of that. So again, we were talking about subsidiarity. We're talking about distributism. Could you speak a little bit about what solidarity means?
Solidarity means having a concern for others. It means, again, I used the term the common good before. Solidarity is an outward view. It's a recognition that each of us as human beings has dignity. And if we are to recognize it in ourselves, we need to recognize that and honor that in others. Solidarity means being respectful of others, being aware of others, knowing who our neighbors are, knowing that our support for local businesses helps them to improve their own lives. And let's say solidarity might mean being supportive of someone that you know who is ill, someone who's lost their job, someone who might have had some sort of a mishap and is in need of some assistance. Solidarity is a recognition that we all have both needs and we all are human and live in community. And as a result, we are interdependent. So when we talk about solidarity as a solidarity party, we talk about it meaning that we have a view toward the common good, the good of all. And sadly, in politics today, that's not true. We have a couple of major parties that have laser focus on certain segments of society that they want to appease, they want to help, they want to support. And with the American Solidarity Party, that's not the case. We're not considering class, we're not considering race, we're not considering sex, we're not considering age, we're not considering employment. We look at everyone and everyone's human dignity.
Good. Thank you very much. Let's move. You spoke about the common good. I think usually I see the common good defined as something like the sum total of social conditions that lead to human flourishing. So when we speak of that, I like to point out it's not just your job. It's not just where you go to school, where you go to work. It touches every area of your life. It has to do with good food, clean water, housing, education, and it begins with respect for the dignity of the person. Can you speak about, I can see behind you the Knights of Columbus pro-life sign. Can you speak about how important pro-life is to you and to the ASP?
That's where it begins. I mean, the first principle of the American Solidarity Party is a respect for human life. Human life from womb to tomb, human life in all of its ages, all of its stages. We are pro-life in support of the child in the womb. We're pro-life in support of the mom who's carrying that baby and who needs proper medical care, both in her pregnancy as well as her delivery and after the delivery. We're pro-life supporting the elderly and the infirm and making sure that they have access to care and that they don't have a sentiment that they are now a burden on society and want to end their own lives so as to potentially improve the lives of somebody else. we're pro-life in the sense that even the most hardened criminals, those that have been guilty of committing some of the most heinous crimes, still have a human dignity that they don't lose, even the sum total of all of their faults, and that we don't believe that their lives should be ended as a result of their faults. So it's a very holistic view. It's a view that recognizes, as I said, human dignity in all of its ages and stages. And honestly, Brad, I think that's the only way in which we can look at it properly, because Christ came and became man. He became a human being and he elevated humans as a result of that. So we need to recognize the dignity that we have in our entire life from conception until natural death, and honor it and do our best to make sure that it thrives.
Thank you. Yeah, I love you. I love you. You mentioned the word became flesh, became a man, the incarnation. So everything is incarnational. That changes everything. We're all potentially partakers in the divine nature. So, of course, that you know gives so much weight to the pro-life movement. And like you said, it's not just about the stereotype is if you're pro-life, you're pro-baby, you're anti-woman, or it doesn't have to be that way. In the closing, we have about 10 minutes left. So I'm going to get to some more specific questions for you about your political run here, and just kind of make a pitch to some people about why they should consider the American Solidarity Party. As far as I know, in Pennsylvania, last I checked, I think you would have to be a write-in candidate. Do you know if that's correct? You would have to be written
Well,
in.
sure. So the status is this, Brad. In each state, as a candidate who is not endorsed by one of the two major parties, or for that matter, a couple of the better known third parties like the Libertarians or the Green Party that have established a party status for themselves in many states.
Hmm.
The ASP, the American Solidarity Party, hasn't achieved that status everywhere. So we either have to secure what's known as ballot access, meaning having our name actually appear on the ballot as a choice among other presidential candidates, or if we aren't able to fulfill the requirements of the Secretary of State in that particular state for gaining ballot access, then the write-in status is the next normal option. Write-in status is valid. It's only that it's much more demanding on the voter, because he or she has to go into the
Mhm.
voting booth with the knowledge of whom it is they want to um, select, and be able to recall that name and write it down.
Yeah.
So our preference is to secure ballot access where we can, but oftentimes the requirements are steep. You have to secure so many signatures in a given state. In my own state, it's 10,000. Some states, it's as little as 300. But you also have a narrow window in which you can secure that. It's usually any time from about March or April of an election year, and concluding by the end of August of that year, allowing at least 60 days for the Secretary of State to review the petition and determine that it's valid and that ballot access should be granted. So it's a challenge. So in Pennsylvania, we'll be striving to have our names on the ballot, so that as you go into the ballot box or
Mhm.
the voting booth, you can hopefully see a name that you recognize and vote for. Otherwise, if we are unable to secure it, we'll be securing write-in status, and we'll be plainly advising people through our campaign how they could vote for us.
Okay, thank you.
Long answer to a short question. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. Well, no, it's necessary because so many people. I mentioned the party or whatever. Well, I don't see it I don't see it here. It's like so. If it's not in front of you, forget about it. Even sometimes it's in front of you. It's asking too much of some people. Um, so let me ask you a few more questions on that note. So let's say someone is. I'm gonna go Republican, Democrat. Those are the two big ones. So let's say someone's a registered Republican or considers themselves a Republican. How would the American Solidarity Party appeal to them? Why should they choose to vote for you or the ASP over the Republican Party? Meaning, what kind of overlap do you have with them, and where are your strengths that might be related to areas that are typically considered conservative or Republican areas?
Sure, sure. Well, I think the social issues are probably those that would most appeal. In the American Solidarity Party, as I've already shared, we stand for life. And now, not all the life issues are those that the Republican Party endorses. They are not necessarily the strongest proponents of abolishing capital punishment, for example, but they usually are strongly supportive of abolishing abortion as well as euthanasia. The other areas that we would probably overlap with the Republicans are support for traditional marriage and support for um, support for business in general, business in the sense that it's local business. A lot of times the Republican Party has an interest in large business, large enterprise, but we would probably have a commonality there. On the Democratic side, we have a lot of concern for social issues such as healthcare. We are supportive of labor and its rights to collectively bargain. We are very strong proponents of the environment and proper stewardship of the earth. So those would tend to be the areas in which we would have overlap with the Democratic Party. But as you can see, the ASP doesn't fit either one of them perfectly, but it does fit all of those facets of Catholic social teaching. It respects the workers, it respects life, it respects the environment. And all of those elements are consistently upheld by our Catholic faith, but they are not consistently upheld by either one of the two major parties. So we are always faced with a dichotomy. We're always faced with choosing one aspect or the other if we have only Republican or Democratic choices.
Yeah. We got about 2 minutes left or so. So I'm going to close with one more question. And again, thank you very much for your time. Often when I bring up third parties, or when I've talked to people that I was going to interview you, there's kind of this thought in the air that, like, that's nice, that's neat, that's a neat thing, but why should someone vote for a third party like the American Solidarity Party? Like, we're told sometimes that's quote unquote throwing your vote away. Or I saw someone say, I wanted to vote for the ASP, but I was afraid Trump would take this state or Biden would take this state. Like, what would you say to a voter that asks you that question?
Sure, I hear it often. I mean, in truth, especially at a presidential level, because we have a very unique system of electing a president where the states are actually electing the president based on the popular vote. The electoral votes are determined, and they actually cast their ballots for the president. You need 270 electoral college votes in order to be elected president of the United States. So the reality is that a single vote in a presidential election is going to have an impact on who is elected is so minuscule that it's hardly worth mentioning. But if me in conscience believes that there are values that I uphold and that there's a candidate that represents those, I can go in and vote as I believe and trust that I have done my due diligence in identifying the values that are appropriate, the individual that best represents those values, and sending a message that this is my choice. This is my vote, and I will use it in a way that represents the good things that I stand for. I realize that people quite often today vote defensively. They're going to vote for so and so to prevent so-and-so from being elected.
Mhm.
If voting against something is how you think that you are best representing your values, then I suggest that that is a wasted vote. Voting for something is a powerful way to express yourself and a powerful way to advance still a fledgling party that needs support and attention in order for more people to learn of its principles, its values, so that it can be more successful in years to come.
Right. I think it's a very good answer. And I'm glad you brought up your conscience. Like the conscience is the conscience should guide. We are bound as people of faith, especially as Catholics, we are bound to follow our conscience and the dictates of our conscience. I can say since I registered to vote, most of the time I seem to be doing what you call defensive voting. And so it would be nice to have a party that we could be excited to vote for, to be involved from the grassroots up, to be involved in our local communities. It's like you said, to get the party ballot access, to get the word of mouth out there, to be standing for something that is grounded in Catholic social teaching, that is 100% pro-life, that is 100% worker, that is for good stewardship of the environment, for the family, all of that. Because frankly, there's a dearth of that in our political system. So I'm gonna close there again, Mr. Sonski. Thank you very much for your time. I had a bunch of other questions. Thank you for those who put your questions. If you ever have any time down the road in the future, I'd love to do this again. If you ever have any time to talk about maybe more specific things or Christian democracy in general, any of that kind of thing. I know you're very busy now, so I thank you for that.
Certainly.
I will include, for all those watching, I'll put the links to your website, to the ASP's website. If people are interested, they can donate there to the campaign and get involved that way. I know there's some people in our area. I know some people involved with the Catholic worker movement that are pro ASP, etc. So again, Mr. Sonski, thank you very much.
One plug, if I may.
Mhm.
I plan to be at the Pennsylvania March for Life
Oh, that's right.
next week. So if there are any that are planning to attend, I'd love to be able to shake your hand and thank you for your support of the ASP, the American Solidarity Party.
Yeah, I meant to mention, Monday the 16th, I believe at 9 a.m. There's a mass at the Cathedral, St. Patrick's, and then right over there, I will think I will be there with a group of pro-life students, but anybody else, Mr. Sonski will be there again. Thank you very much, and thank you so much for giving me this time.
You're welcome. God bless you.
Thank you. Okay, we're off.